Hello, hello, hello. This is Tamika Seaton, President and CEO of Grow Your Nonprofit, where we help small, startup, and stagnant nonprofits grow through fundraising strategies, strategic planning, and so much more. Guys, today you are in for a treat. I have my special guest here, Chelsea Seibel. She's with Manny and Napier. She's going to tell us all about growing our endowment at our nonprofit and so much more. But before we get started, I'd like to thank the sponsors of my podcast. Hodges University with a campus in Fort Myers. Stay near, go far. They change lives for the better. Trinity Life Foundation Naples, helping at-risk youth through their enrichment programs. AVID, that stands for the Associations of Haitians Living Abroad. They have an amazing support center right here in the beautiful Fort Myers, where they will help people in need with rental assistance, utility billing, immigration support, and the list goes on. Last but not least, Vax Truth. They received a grant from the CDC to raise awareness of COVID-19 and community resources in the Black and Brown communities. So, like I said, my special guest here is Chelsea. Hi, Chelsea.
I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I am so happy to have you. Last year, we recorded a podcast, How to Start an Endowment.
Yes.
So I know all of the nonprofits who went out there and started an endowment with your company. Now they want to know how to grow their endowment.
Yes, and that's a great question because that's what we want to do, right? We want to grow the endowment and help the mission.
Yes.
So there's a lot of different ways to do that.
Yes, and she's going to spill the tea today, guys. So before we get started, for our audience, our new audience who don't know anything about us, about you, please do share a little bit about yourself and what you do at Manny and Napier.
Yeah, so I am a financial advisor with Manny and Napier. We're a company that has been around for over 53 years. We help nonprofits. We work with over 250 nonprofits across the East Coast, and we help them in all aspects, whether that's getting started, but really it's growing it. How do you do that, and the investment behind that? So I love it. We also work with individuals, but it's great when you can work with a nonprofit because when you help the nonprofit grow, you're helping the whole community.
That is absolutely correct. So I know in the episode that we recorded before, we talked about how to start an endowment. Now we're talking about how to grow your endowment. But just a little snippet for those nonprofits who have not started an endowment. Let's dive a little bit into that, and then we'll talk about how to grow your endowment once you start one.
Yeah, so there's really three main types of endowments. The first is a true endowment, and that's what you traditionally think of an endowment. It's supposed to be there to help with the organization in perpetuity. There's a term endowment, so just like the name implies, it's for a certain period of time. And then you have a board-designated fund, or also called a quasi-endowment, and that's just money that the board sets aside, works like an endowment, but you just have more flexibility than you would with a true endowment.
Talk about the flexibility that you have with that endowment.
Yeah, well, the purpose, with a true endowment, because you want it to go on in perpetuity, there's limitations. How much you can pull out, what it's used for. With a board-designated fund, you have more say because you don't have the obligations that you do with a true endowment.
So for example, if a nonprofit had $15 million, they could allocate $5 million to each type of endowment, right?
You could.
Yeah. So that's diversification.
Diversification.
Very
yes.
good. Very good. So say a nonprofit was so blessed to have you as their financial advisor. What would that look like? Would you come out and work with them on an annual basis and give a report before their board and let them know how their endowment is performing, and then make suggestions on how to tweak it accordingly if it's not performing as you thought?
Yes. So with an endowment, there are fiduciary duties that the board has with monitoring the endowment. And that's something that we can help with. We do a fiduciary monitoring report, and we show, what the investments are doing. Is it in line with your investment policy statement? We help align the two of those, and we'll help, even a step further. Do you need board education? You need to have a checklist to make sure as a board that you are doing everything that you should be doing to stay out of trouble.
Okay, so two things jumped out at me. Board education, what does that mean? And the second thing is board policy. Can you explain what is a board policy when it comes to an endowment, and what is board education, and who gives that board education? Because I think that's very, very important.
Mm-hmm. Well, board education, it really can be a financial advisor. You can there's different organizations that will help with that. If you have someone internally that might be able to help with that. But it really comes down to, are you doing your due diligence of doing what's in the best interest of the organization? And even though you might be doing that, you need written documentation that you are going through the steps that you're supposed to be going through, just in case anything, you never know if somebody were to come back and say, were you doing this in 2017, the funds dropped, what does that look like? You can pull up the records and say, this is what we were doing as a board.
Is that something the organization's legal counsel would help them with, or their financial advisor, or is there a template that they could start from and then tweak it to tailor the needs of their organization?
Every organization is different, and not all financial advisors provide that, and not all attorneys provide that. We do have checklists that we can give organizations to start off if they just wanted something to go off of. We have templates for investment policy statements. We have templates for gifting policy.
I like that.
So we try to make it as easy as possible because it's an overwhelming thing to get started with endowments, and we try to, eliminate some of the stress that organizations.
Yeah, because oftentimes I work with mostly the startup and the small nonprofits, and even just putting together and working with them for a strategic plan and board development and then fundraising and events, it's overwhelming, especially for the founder, because they're really passionate about the cause, but they don't really realize all of the intricate details that are involved with running and growing a nonprofit. So that can be very, very frustrating. Also, board education. How often should a board be educated about their endowment and what's going on with the investment?
So the initial education should be done in the beginning. Any new members, and maybe every so often you should do it again, but the actual fiduciary monitoring report should be done at least annually, just to make sure that it's in track and in line with that investment policy statement.
So the monitoring report, what does that entail when you share that with the board?
Yeah, so we'll look at the investments. We're looking at how much you're withdrawing out of the accounts. We're looking at what the investments are doing. We're looking at, and part of that is the withdrawal percentage. A lot of times in the investment policy statement, you state a certain goal of what you're looking to withdraw each year. So we'll look at that too. And that's the tricky thing as well, is when you invest in endowment, sometimes you're at the mercy of what the market's doing. And we had a tough year last year with both the equity side and fixed income. So I'm sure a lot of organizations are analyzing how did that affect the endowment, and what do we do going forward. So those are the conversations that we have with our nonprofit.
Yeah, and what I like about the 3 different types of endowments is that depending on your risk tolerance, now I'm not an expert, I'm just going from experience, depending on your risk tolerance, you could decide that, say, this one is a long-term, and perhaps we want to, have a higher risk tolerance because, we know the market goes up and down, and then perhaps maybe a fund that we want to withdraw from, maybe we have mutual funds or something that's less aggressive and safer. And I know we can't give out advice. This is me, guys. This is not Chelsea. And so that's why I like the 3 different types, because you could have different levels of tolerance in each different type of investment.
And I think it does come back to your withdrawal. How much do you need every year? The less you need, the more aggressive that you can be with the objective.
Okay, so let's jump right in, because I know our audience really want to know, okay, we have our endowment. We have $100 million in there. So we want to be like the Princetons and the Yales of the world and have billions of dollars. But those organizations have been around for hundreds of years, and they started off from almost the beginning. So I really love what they've done to create sustainability for their organization. So a nonprofit, they're just getting started. Say they have 100,000. What strategies you've seen or the organizations use to get on a track of growth?
Yeah, so different organizations utilize different places to start, right? There's plan giving. Plan giving is talking to donors, potential donors, whether that's through their estate plan or maybe a big gift. You have a capital campaign that you can do. Typically, that requires more resources. So it's easier to generally start on the plan giving side. But I think it really is important to know what's going on in the legislation and certain abilities. So, for example, last year, they raised the standard deduction overall in the last couple of years. And last year, they allowed you to do a $300, $600 for a married filing jointly above the line deduction. So what that means is the standard deduction is about $26,000 filing jointly. So a lot of people don't itemize their taxes anymore because it's so high. And typically, you can't take a deduction unless you itemize. So what this allowed you to do is take that above the line deduction. So as an organization, this would be a great opportunity to reach out to donors and say, this might be an opportunity to save on taxes. Think of us. This is what you can do. We've seen strategies where, going back to that standard deduction being higher, utilizing donor advised funds. Donor advised funds, a lot of organizations have it, whether that be Charles Schwab, Fidelity, and what it allows you to do, it allows you to set up an account. It's technically an irrevocable gift, but they allow you to have say on where those gifts goes. So we are seeing people, and we're advising clients that want to take advantage of this, to bunch contributions into 1 year. So, for example, say you give to your church $5,000 a year. That's not pushing you over that standard deduction level. So maybe you give 4 years worth, you give $20,000. Now it's pushing you over so you can itemize. You take that deduction when you give it to the donor advised fund, but the donor advised fund lets you do it over 4 years. So you take advantage of that. You can even invest it and have the funds growing for you and do it that way. And even another step further, you could do appreciated stock, and then you don't have to pay the capital gains taxes. So there's all kinds of strategies. And if you're knowledgeable on these, as an organization, you can talk to your donors about that, because it really comes back to motivation.
Right. How does one become knowledgeable? Because I could see someone being intimidated to even start a conversation with their donor. But when I was a senior fundraiser at a particular organization, I was in charge of our planned giving program. And, I would take our people who have already decided to leave the organization in their estate plans, to lunch, or we would go to breakfast, and I would do a lot of sit-down interviews and record them and put them on our website and newsletter, of course, with their permission, to encourage others. And then annually we would have a panel discussion with the executive director. We have our attorney, and then one person who was leaving the organization in the estate plans. And then we invite other people who are leaving the organization in the estate plans and who haven't thought about it. And it was amazing. It was amazing how that program was able to grow. But for me, when I had a conversation, you listen to certain key words that people say maybe they've complaining about maybe they're paying too much taxes, or they lost their spouse, or they don't have any family. Those were some of the key terms. But how does one, say a lot of people go into nonprofit from other sectors? I actually interviewed someone last month who was in hospitality, and I actually talked to two people who were in hospitality and made a smooth transition into nonprofit. And I thought I was like, that makes a lot of sense. But how does one educate themselves on these types of strategies when they're talking to donors?
That's a great question. And a lot of it is surrounding yourself with the right people, whether that's, a financial advisor. We help our clients with things like that. We try to keep everyone updated on different changes. But even if you're not comfortable with that, and a donor expresses some interest, say you'll meet with their attorney or their accountant, and you can make it a group effort, because that's where you get the best ideas. Is when all of the experts are in one room and you can work together, because it is knowing what that motivation is, whether it's recognition and, you're a hospital and you want to name a building and that's what their goal. It's okay, how best to fund that? And you can structure it different ways. Or maybe it's, we have I'm familiar with an organization that they set up an annual dinner. So if you name the charity irrevocably in your estate plan, you get to go to this fancy dinner every year. So that's a great way of not only brand recognition, so people are talking to their friends about this great dinner and getting involved. So it starts the conversation, and then once you start that conversation is where you bring in the different experts.
You hear that, guys? Whenever there's food involved, your donors are going to give you money.
Yes.
So feed them, and feed them well, and feed them often.
Exactly.
Right? So before we wrap up, what is one last nugget could you share with our audience about growing their endowment?
Just try to get as much education as possible, and really strive to know your donors more, identify your donors, prospects, and figure out how you can best match the two between what motivates them and on the other side on how we can help them meet that motivation, so that they are willing to give more to your organization.
Exactly. And I always believe in quote unquote dating your donor. So say your donor is new to the organization. Obviously you're not going to ask them to marry you. So, because I look at plan giving as you're asking them to get married, right? Because you're asking them to make a long-term financial commitment to your organization. So before you go out and ask your donors for a plan gift, and unless they come and ask you and you've put the information out there, or if there's something you heard something and it makes sense and you're comfortable enough with that person. But I recommend that basically you date your donor, you get to know them. If you know they have a birthday coming up, if you have a donor management program, put that birthday in there. If they're having an anniversary or they just had a new grandchild, put all of that information in there. So every time you have a touch, that means an interaction with your client, you can bring that up and the client's like, oh my, they really remembered. Oh, they're great. And, do outside the box thinking, and don't always contact your donor when it's time for money or it's time to ask for something or they can do something for you. I always believe in finding out what you can do for them. For example, I'm not a nonprofit, even though my company is called Grow Your Nonprofit. And a lot of people think I'm a nonprofit. I always have to explain that. But I know during Hurricane Ian, I just picked up the phone and afterwards I was asking my clients, how they're doing. Is there anything I could help you with when I got electricity, if you needed to come over, if you needed a shower? And people really appreciated that. And actually, most of the time, sometimes it turns into business. Oh, I've been meaning to call you. I've been thinking about you. Even during tough times, I can say that, sometimes you can do really well if you just see how you can be of service to others.
I 100% agree. And let people know what your organization is doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing great things.
Right.
Make sure the world's aware, because that really encourages people to give more. When they see the impact that you're making on the community, more people want to help.
Exactly. And don't worry about it being a natural disaster or downturn in the economy. Maybe your donor can't give as much, but they still want to give, right? So before we wrap up, please share with our audience how to reach you.
Sure, you can contact me a couple different ways. You can reach me via phone, 239-237-6430, or via email. It's Seibel, so C as in Charlie, Seibel, at Manning, MANNING Napier.com.
Guys, thank you so much, Chelsea, for joining us. You heard it here first. How to start your endowment, which was last year, and now we're talking about how to grow your endowment. And what's going to be our next episode?
I guess it would be monitoring it, making sure you're on track and doing your due diligence.
You hear that, guys?
Keep you out of trouble.
Keep you out of trouble, how to monitor your endowment to measure your success. So stay tuned for more of Grow Your Nonprofit podcast episodes.